to the Remembering Akron podcast. I'm your host, Derek Maxfield, and today my guest is George Stege. Welcome, George.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. So I understand that your story begins in Chicago, Illinois. You were born in 1927.
No, try 1947.
1947.
You're making me older than I am, and I'm getting old enough as it is.
But 47, that's right after World War II.
Correct.
That's a pretty tough time in our history. Did you have anybody in your family involved in World War II?
No, my father was blind, so therefore was not drafted by the military. And my brother was too young at that particular point in time. He eventually did join the military and did serve during the Korean War.
I see, a little bit later.
A little bit later, yeah. But no, there's no one in my immediate family anyway that was involved with the war.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about your parents. You just told me that your father, Henry, was blind.
Correct. And
your mother, Frances.
My mother, Frances, was a hardworking person. She worked in the office. She did mainly purchasing for a corrugated company called Inland Container Corporation. Was there for a number of years, and that's in a Chicago suburb of Melrose Park.
Mm-hmm. Was your father also from Illinois?
My father was from Illinois. Yeah, he grew up in Illinois, in Madison, Illinois, which is a southern suburb of Chicago. And then at age 6, he got this disease called spinal meningitis, and it left him blind. And so what happened to him is at that time, you got to remember that he was actually born in the 19th century, in 1897. At that point in time, they didn't know how to deal, I don't think, to a great degree with blind folks. And so as a result, he was shipped off to Jacksonville, Illinois, which at that point was the only school for the blind in the state of Illinois. And even though he was only 6 years old, he went to school there, and they taught him a trade there. And of all things, what they taught him to do was how to tune pianos. You got to remember back then, pianos were a little more popular. This is even before TV sets.
Yeah.
At that particular point in time. And so he was tuning pianos, his entire life. And I knew him. I would go on, when I was a kid, I would go on piano jobs with him. And then he eventually did get a job in a factory at Kimball Piano, where he actually tuned pianos, actually in the factory. And there's another factory in the Chicago area called Cobranson. That's what moved us from the southern suburbs to the western suburbs, is my father was able to find full-time employment as a piano tuner, because there were two piano companies that were, I wouldn't say right next to each other, but they certainly were within shouting distance of each other. And so he went from one company, it closed down, he went to another company. And that's what he did for a livelihood.
I see. That's an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
And are both of your parents still around?
No. Both have passed on
for
quite some time. My father was actually 50 years old when I was born.
Oh, okay. A little bit older?
Yeah, my mother was 16 years younger than my father.
I see. Do you know the ethnic backgrounds of your folks? Do you know any of the genealogical backgrounds?
Yeah, my father, I've done a little research into this. My father was 100% German.
Okay.
His father, or my grandfather, actually immigrated from Germany. And it just so happens that the largest candy show in the U.S., largest candy show in the world, which Ford Gum attends, it takes place in Cologne, Germany every year.
Okay.
And it's like 5 or 6 times the size of McCormick Place in Chicago. I mean, it's just huge.
Yeah. You
can be in the Belgian Pavilion. My wife's ideal thing was drop her off in the Belgian Pavilion on Wednesday and pick her up on Saturday, because she can go through and get all the chocolates. But anyway, one of these, a couple years, when I went there, I would stay longer. And I actually drove to the town that my grandfather immigrated from.
Really?
In order to try to research some of it. And so initially, I wrote the Lutheran minister in the town, because almost all Germans are Lutheran.
Right.
And explained, who I was, and I'd like to take a look at the church records. And we set up a time, so I drove to this town. And you want to talk about age difference between America and Europe. This particular town, the first time I arrived there, was celebrating its 800th year of existence.
Wow.
So I met the minister, and he took me and showed me the records, and he actually had found a reference to my grandfather being born.
Okay.
And I started going through the records and was completely befuddled because it didn't dawn on me, first of all, that all these records were in cursive. And the German language has changed through the years, and so I had a very difficult time deciphering almost anything there.
Okay.
So I ended up giving up on that, and what I ended up doing was going to a bar in that town, explaining what my situation was. When I told them what my last name was, they said, well, they know some people who have my same last name. And they took out the phone book and they showed me, it was like a whole page of people with the last name of Stege, S-T-E-G-E. And you hardly find anyone with that name here in the U.S. And so they suggested I contact this one guy, Johann, or John, because he was the postman and he knows everybody. So I go to Johann's driveway on a Saturday, and I just pull up in my car, and he happened to be out in the yard, and he comes over to see what this is all about. And I pull out my driver's license, and I said, I'm your long-lost cousin from America, and showed it to him. And he was fascinated, of course, by that. He invites me into his house. His daughter was in high school at the time, and they all take English. And so his daughter, takes her English-German dictionary and brings it down, and we start having conversations, etc. And one of the more interesting things that happens is his mother was also living with them. Now, his mother lived there during the war. And when she found out that I was there, she came down and started yelling at me in German for bombing her during World War II.
Oh, no.
But anyway, she turned out to be my best ally because after that dinner, I said goodbye, gave them some gum because that's what we make. And I got a letter back from them saying that she had actually gone to the church, in essence on my behalf, because she was old enough to understand this cursive older German, and she had actually delved into my family tree, and they invited me back, and that they would have a family reunion of cousins, that were still alive, that in there. And so I went back, obviously, and visited some of my German relatives, that were there. Most of them, again, were older because remember, my father was 50 years old when I was born.
Yeah.
And most all of them, of course, served in World War II that were still alive. I did visit the cemetery in the town, which again had a lot of people with my last name. I don't know how they are all related.
Okay.
But anyway, I have done some research and have gone back a few times. I was shown the house that my grandfather immigrated out of, if you will, and it's still in the family. And so I was able to go into that house and talk with the folks there. English is more spoken there than German is here, so you get someone young enough that has to learn English in school, and you can learn a lot from them. So.
That's a remarkable story.
Yeah.
How wonderful to be able to kind of step into the shoes of your grandfather back there.
Right.
What do you know of your mother's family?
My mother is basically English and French. Her maiden name is Patterson. She is related to a Patterson that actually signed the Declaration of Independence.
All right.
Her family is largely based in Ohio. And then my mother, came to Illinois. Some of her family's in Indiana. She's got Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois is where her family is spread across. As far as going back and trying to research her family, with the name of Patterson, that's pretty common. And I was not that successful in trying to find someone who I knew was related.
Okay, but making a connection to the Declaration of Independence is a pretty cool thing, isn't it?
That's cool.
So you grew up in the Chicago area, the Windy City, and so I have to ask you, from somebody that's lived in the snow belt here in upstate New York for a long time, I've always kind of thought when I look at the weather that Chicago would be a worse place to live.
Well, it depends on what you like. I mean, certainly Buffalo gets more snow than Chicago because Chicago's on the west side of the lake. Lake Michigan is Chicago's lake. And the wind, blows across the lake and picks up moisture and then dumps. And so Buffalo happens to be, for the most part, on the east side of Lake Erie. And so I think that's the reason Buffalo gets more snow. However, I will say this, is that the lakes moderate the temperature. I mean, it's never been colder than, having a brisk wind blow across the prairies there in Illinois. And it does get colder in Chicago than it does in the Buffalo area.
That's what I thought. The Midwest can get to be a really, really chilly place in the wintertime.
Yes, it can. It's also very flat.
Yeah.
We're here, and I'm not saying that in Buffalo itself it doesn't have many hills, but you don't have to go too far to where you get a little hilly.
Right.
I mean, in the Chicago area, the joke is you can go on the second floor, look out, and watch your dog run away for a week.
So you went to school in the Chicago area,
Yes.
but it looks like you also got your college education in Illinois, too.
My bachelor's degree was at Western Illinois University in Macomb, Illinois. It's near the Mississippi River, near the Iowa border.
Oh, okay. Downstate?
Downstate, yeah.
Why did you choose there?
Well, it was far enough away from home.
Okay.
But not too far away from home. It's in-state, so you had in-state tuition, if you will. And a lot of it had to do with my interests at the time. When I was in high school, yes, I played on the tennis team, but my major interest was, because in Illinois it's much stronger than it is here in Buffalo, I was on the debate team. And I did very well with debate in Illinois, and I wanted to continue that. And so who had the best debate program of the area colleges in Illinois? And at that time, Western Illinois had some strong folks that were managing that, coaching that. And so that's what lured me there.
Really? Mm-hmm. So at that time, did you have any thoughts of a political career?
Yeah, a little bit I had thoughts of a political career because my initial major was political science.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then during the time that I was there was, of course, the time when the Vietnam War was raging.
Mm.
Okay, and initially I had a 2S deferment because while you're in college, you had 2S deferment for a long time there. And it got me into thinking about, well, do I really want to, graduate and not so much go into politics, but although I thought I might go into politics, my initial yearning was to go into law.
I see.
To become a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Well, debate skills are important for a lawyer.
Yeah, debate is based on a legal model, actually. So anyway, I decided at the time because, again, Western Illinois was largely an educational school. Almost everybody there was getting teacher certified in science or English or whatever. So I decided, well, why don't I go to speech and English? I was an English minor, speech major, and go student teaching, see if I like that. Because law school, you don't really have to have a poli-sci degree or whatever.
Right. They'll take anybody.
They'll take anybody as long as you do okay in the LSAT. So I decided I would do that, and I student taught in Elmhurst, Illinois, and actually loved it. And I decided that's what I really want to do. And so I ended up teaching for 10 years.
And you taught English?
I was a member of the English department. I coached the debate teams.
Nice.
Again, 2 years in Elmhurst and then 8 years in Glenview, Illinois.
And you got, I see that you have graduate work. You got an MA and an MBA.
Correct.
Eventually, your MBA was from the University of Buffalo.
Yeah, by that time I was here. By that time I have accepted a position here at Ford Gum.
Okay.
When the position was initially offered, my thoughts were I didn't want to move to Buffalo.
Okay.
But I was in education. I was burning out because when you're in the what I call very competitive debate circuit, if you will, you're spending all your weekends going to tournaments. You're spending all your summers at summer institutes, and it gets you get burned out. So I'm thinking I can't continue to do this forever and ever.
Okay.
Particularly since I started having a family.
Yeah.
So I figured I need to find something else to do. Well, this offer came to me in Buffalo at Ford Gum, and I thought, well, I'd go there for a couple years, get it on my resume, and then I can move out to where I wanted to move out to. Well, I came to Ford Gum in 1980, and I looked around, and there was one president, there were two vice presidents. The youngest was 64 at the time. So I thought, there might be some upward mobility possibilities here.
Yeah.
Okay, and sure enough, I mean, we were owned at that time by a group out of New York City called the Oppenheimer Fund Group, and they had no desire to really micromanage you to come to Buffalo or at all. So it wasn't like someone from headquarters is going to come and take over. So when these people started retiring, their first question is, who do we have there that we can promote? And so that actually put me sort of in the, I would say, driver's seat, because then I started getting promoted to, general manager and things like that at Ford Gum. And then the Oppenheimer Group sold out to this group from Helsinki, Finland.
That's quite a transition from education to corporate gum making.
Yes, well, that's why I decided I needed to get a better background in business, and so that's why I got my MBA at UB. And while both Niagara and Canisius would grant me credits for, some previous work that I had done, UB granted me no credit for anything. And I thought, maybe I should learn everything. So I ended up deciding to pursue the MBA at UB.
All right. And when did you finish that?
That's a good question, because I don't remember the exact year.
All right. Well, you were already well established at Ford Gum by that time.
Yeah.
How is it you arrived in Akron?
Well, Ford Gum was in Akron.
Okay.
That's why.
All right.
Ford Gum has been in Akron since the 1950s.
All right.
Okay, so...
I was just confused there because you were talking about moving to Buffalo.
Well, okay, moving to Buffalo for Ford Gum.
See, it shows my ignorance of this particular area.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
So you got involved at Ford Gum. You've been there ever since. So obviously this really worked out very well for you. There's been some bumps along the way, though, right?
Of course, always. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Well, you got to take a look at, first of all, we are the only gumball company left in the United States.
Is that true?
That's true.
So any gumball you see in one of these machines comes from you?
No. Any gumball made in the U.S.
In the U.S. comes from you. All right.
Correct. Okay. Because part of the reason that we are the only gumball company left in the United States, and I urge anyone who listens to this podcast that has access to a Wall Street Journal, just take a look at it, any Wall Street Journal, anytime, any day, and look in the commodities section. You'll find that there's two prices for sugar. One's world pricing, and the other is domestic pricing. That's how the Wall Street Journal divides it up. And if you look at the world price for sugar and the domestic price for sugar, you find that the domestic price for sugar is approximately 2 times what the world price for sugar is. So for me to run a gumball factory in the United States, I have to pay twice as much for sugar than my main competitors, who, by the way, happen to be Canadian, not that far from here, because in Canada they can get world sugar, and so they can get sugar at half price. And because, and then still this is still the case, even though Trump is trying to get rid of NAFTA and what have you. But once NAFTA was established, there are no duties coming in, so they can get world sugar at half my price, and they can transform it into gumballs and bring it in with no duty at all.
Oh my goodness!
And so that has devastated the other 4 gumball companies that existed in 1980 when I came.
Wow! So there's been some management changes and ownership kind of changes along the way too.
Yeah, there have been management changes along the way. I think every...
You mentioned a Finland group.
Correct. Yeah, we were owned by a company called Huhtamaki Oy. They're out of Helsinki, Finland. Huhtamaki Oy purchased 13 gum and candy companies between 1983 and 1985 and combined them into a company that they called Leaf Inc. It was the 3rd largest candy company in the United States, next to Hershey and Mars. And there are brands that you probably heard of, things like Jolly Rancher and Heath Bar and Payday and Good and Plenty. They were all owned by the Huhtamaki Oy at that time. And so they set up like I said, they set up a headquarters in Chicago. Ford Gum was one of their acquisitions. And so they moved me back to Chicago for a while, even though I had the responsibility of Ford Gum. I was back in the Chicago office, which ended up being fortuitous for what happens down the road, because ultimately, the company from Finland sells to Hershey in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And Hershey, Pennsylvania made it clear that they didn't want to keep the gum companies. And so because I happened to be in the Chicago area at the time when all of this was happening, and Hershey was coming to the Chicago area because that was headquarters for the Leaf Company, or Huhtamaki Oy in the U.S., it allowed me to see what was going to happen and to take action to try to secure and do a management buyout of Ford Gum, because Hershey clearly was not going to keep it. They clearly were either going to close it or else they were going to try to sell it off.
And so you swooped in and brought about a management buyout.
Correct.
And that was in what year?
97.
97. Okay. And it's been pretty much the same ever since?
Yeah. Last 21 years. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What kind of growth have you seen?
Well, we've seen growth, and one of the reasons that, we're over 100 years old at Ford Gum, and one of the reasons we have survived when others haven't is because we've been I think we're pretty good at adapting to change. And one of the things that Ford Mason, our founder, started and kept the company going for a number of years was selling gumballs to people who filled gumball machines. Mm-hmm. That was the business. Okay. Well, if we hadn't managed to find a way to expand outside of that business, we wouldn't be in business today, because you just ask yourself, how many gumball machines do you see now versus how many gumball machines you saw in your youth? Mm-hmm. And you're finding there's fewer and fewer gumball machines out there.
That's true. And
there are a lot of reasons for that. And I'll just give you one. The internet has, in my opinion, done more damage to the gumball machine world, if you will, than anything else, because no one woke up this morning and said, I got to buy a gumball. It's an impulse item. If they go in the store, they see it, they buy it.
Right.
Their kid's with it. He sees it, shut the kid up, buy the gumball.
That makes sense.
Okay. Well, if you shop on the internet, you don't see gumballs. And so as a result, gumball sales don't exist. And so that has, I think, hurt the industry probably more than any of the other changes that have hurt that industry. So Ford Gum continued to rely on that, because when I came to the company in 1980, that was over 90% of our sales were people who filled gumball machines. Mm-hmm. Okay, today it's less than 5% of our sales.
Wow. So what do you make instead?
Well, what we ended up doing, and what we're very fortunate, and this was not clever thinking on my part, it just happened to work out, is when we were doing our management buyout from Hershey, one of the divisions that I was in charge of besides Ford Gum was something called the Carousel Division, and they make carousel gumball machines. Okay, so that's another company that the guys from Finland purchased. Okay, and so I knew if Hershey didn't want it to sell gum, they certainly didn't want to sell gumball machines. They didn't want to sell Hershey bars. They don't want to sell metal machines, mm-hmm. right? Or cast iron machines. So when we did the management buyout, one of the things that I requested is that they include the Carousel Gumball Machine Division that they now also have and make it part of Ford Gum. Before it wasn't. So in 97, when we did the buyout, Ford Gum now had the Carousel Gumball Machines. Well, what the Carousel Gumball Machine Division did for Ford Gum is Carousel Gumball Machines had a sales network that sold retail. So they sold Walmart, they sold Target, they sold CVS, they sold all your major retail chains. Ford Gum was just selling to people who fill gumball machines before. Mm-hmm. So what this does is it gave Ford Gum access to what I'll call major retail in the U.S. So all of the retail stores now are buying directly from Ford Gum. At least they were buying directly from Ford Gum for the carousel machines. And so, it didn't take too long to realize that there might be a future here. And then the other revelation that occurred was when we first did this, we make gumballs. And so we were putting gumballs in a tube, and we put 12 gumballs into a long tube, and we called it Yowzer gum. Well, no one ever heard of Yowzer. It's a name we made up in 97 when we got the company. So we tried to sell Yowzer into Dollar General and made some sales. And, and a few other chains bought it as well. Okay, but sales weren't going particularly well. So we thought, well, what can we do to get more sales on this tube gum? We thought, well, why don't we try a license? Let's try putting another brand name on it, and maybe we can get someone to license gum. In other words, if we sell it, we make it, and they just get a royalty percentage for a license fee. And well, who can we go to? So we went to a company called Smarties. Smarties makes candy. I mean, everyone's probably heard of Smarties. May not be your favorite candy, but it's pretty well known. So what we did is we put the Smarties name on this tube of gum rather than the Yowzer name on this tube of gum. And we were pretty nervous. I was very nervous about it because now we're going back to that same retailer and we're saying, this 12-ball tube of Yowzer that we were selling you? Well, we have a license now. We got to pay for that license. So, it's only going to be a 10-ball tube. We're going to take two gumballs out to help us pay for this license. And by the way, we're going to raise the price a little bit too. So we're raising the price and we're giving less product. I'm thinking they're not going to buy it. At the end of the first quarter, after we started selling Smarties, we sold more Smarties than we did the entire previous year.
Holy cow.
Yowzer. So that told me that brands sell. And if a consumer has a choice and he looks at gumballs, yeah, quantity makes a difference, yeah, value makes a difference, but he can choose Smarties, which he's heard of, and or else he can choose Yowzer, which he didn't hear of. He's going to choose Smarties. So that told me licensing is the way to go, because a company like Ford Gum, we employ 150 people. We're here in Akron, New York. We can't afford to build a brand. I mean, the companies that have built brands have spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to build that brand. Mm-hmm. But if we can license that name, then and make the gum and sell it under a license, then we can take advantage of all the advertising that has been done for that license, and the consumer is aware of it. So we decided to go into licensing, and that's why in 2010 we acquired the license for Big League Chew, which is a shredded gum and like a tobacco.
Both
pouch.
of my kids love it.
Okay, and that has worked out well for us. And in January of next year, we've acquired a license. We're actually going to do on a sugar-free basis Jelly Belly gum. So Jelly Belly, exists in jelly beans, 138 flavors, but we're now going to make some Jelly Belly sugar-free gum for them.
Wow.
Actually for us, but with their name on it.
Right.
And so by expanding the licensing part, we have been able to grow the company. And that's why I think we have survived where others haven't, because if you just stuck with gumball machines, you wouldn't be in business today.
That's really a great story. So here we are approaching 2020. Mm-hmm. When do you think retirement's on the horizon for you?
It'll probably be in the next couple of years.
You think so? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you see the future of this company once it passes from your management?
Well, it depends, of course, on who buys it and to what their vision might be.
I see.
Okay, so we may end up selling it somewhat internally as well. And if we were to sell it internally, then I think the future will be similar to the recent past in terms of the emphasis will be on retail sales and the emphasis will be on licensed product.
So if somebody was to write the history of Akron, of course, one of the things that they would say is that, well, this gum factory provided all these jobs for the folks in the Akron area. Correct. What else would you hope that they would say that you've contributed to Akron?
Well, the Ford Mason model was putting out gumball machines for charity. So the Ford Mason model had the store owner donating space to put gumball machines, and the commission that would normally go to the store owner and then goes to the charity. So there were, during the heyday of the Ford Mason type gumball machine charity, there were over $2 million a year that were given to various charities. Most of them are local charities, like the local Kiwanis Club or Lions Club or Rotary Club or whatever. That too has somewhat consolidated. So we still run the charity division of Ford Gum, but our major recipients now become muscular dystrophy, United Cerebral Palsy, are the firms that, and the Susan G. Komen Associations. Those are the three firms that get the most money right now with that.
So we have your professional career down pretty well. We haven't talked too much about your family. So you got married to Mary Lou Leary.
Correct.
And when did you marry her?
I married Mary Lou Leary. You're really testing me here, aren't you?
You got to know the anniversary day or you get yourself in trouble.
In 72.
72. All right. So you're pretty well established at Fort Gum at that time.
No, I didn't start Fort Gum to 1980.
1980, right. Okay. So how did you meet?
We met in college.
Okay. Very nice. So when you were working on your undergraduate degree?
Correct.
Okay. And when did you start a family?
Well, we started a family 41 years ago because my oldest daughter just turned 41.
And how many children do you have?
I had two children. My oldest daughter's 41. She has two grandchildren, ages 7 and 5.
I see.
Both girls. And we had another daughter, Jennifer, who unfortunately was hit by a taxi cab while crossing the street in New York City and passed away.
Oh, my. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That is a sad story. So you have one daughter still, and you have grandchildren.
Correct.
So I presume that when you retire, there's some hope to spend some time with them.
Yes. In fact, there's time spent now. They live in the Chicago area.
Okay.
We have maintained our sales office in the Chicago area, so I get to visit them, quite a bit now before retirement, because that's our main sales office for all the retail sales and licensing sales that I'd referred to previously. Our manufacturing facility is here, and our sales office for the gumball machines is here, but the retail sales force is out of the Chicago office.
I see. So you're kind of going back and forth.
I go back and forth. In fact, I'm leaving in 2 days to go to Chicago.
I see. Very nice story. So let me give you the hardest question last. So imagine a generation from now, one of your grandchildren having a conversation with their children, and they're talking about you. What would you hope they would tell their children about you?
Oh, I think they would hope they would tell me, they would talk about the good times we had together with the grandchildren. In fact, I just spent a week with the oldest one. We call it Camp Mimi and Grandpa G. I'm referred to as Grandpa G. So she just came up here for a week, and my wife and I worked out that she spend the morning with my wife, because my wife has rheumatoid arthritis, isn't extremely active, and that I ended up taking the grandchild for the afternoon and do active stuff. So as a result, I've gotten to know them pretty well through that, as well as visiting them. I think that's basically it.
Wonderful. Well, George, it's been wonderful to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening in, and remember to tune in to the next episode of Remembering Akron.